Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ad Age Publishers panel, where we provide perspective and thought leadership on a critical topic facing the industry as a whole. I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher for Ad Age, and today we're going to have a conversation about the best measurement tools to help justify marketing spend and optimally future-proof business success. Marketing continues to be in a state of flux, as we all know. While many of the trends affecting the industry were well underway at the beginning of the year, the disruption, primarily fueled by the pandemic, hurried along the progression of those changes and sped it from evolution to revolution. Now CMOs and their departments are under increasing pressure to show their contribution to the bottom line and justify their marketing spend. Joining me today is Neustar's product marketing director, Allyson Dietz, and WarnerMedia's senior vice president of ad sales research, Beth Rockwood, to chat about the future of measurement and how marketers can strike the right balance for short-term and long-term goals. Welcome, both of you, to our conversation today.
Hi, guys.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you both for a little chat on this extraordinarily important topic for marketers and agencies to appreciate really what they should be thinking about as we're sort of diving into what will optimally be a much better year than 2020. Let me set this up if I can. Before we dive into the conversation about the measurement tools in particular, we should acknowledge the stark reality of where we are right now. It's been obviously a very tough year. What are some of the primary lessons you believe that marketers learned this past year? And then also we'll talk about what they want to carry into 21. I'll start with you, Beth.
Sure, thank you.
Sure.
We've been just tracking the enormous amount of change that is happening with consumers, as have our marketers. And I think that is the main challenge, is just understanding how to deal with that change. We just released a paper called Life Transitions, and what we're seeing is that people are just having to make shifts unlike they've ever made before, and it's emotional. They need different things than they've needed in the past, and I think that's what marketers really need to embrace in this new world that we're living in. They need to understand exactly what the right message is to deliver to that right consumer at this moment in time, and hitting the right people and hitting the right tone is really hard to do, and I think marketers are doing it well.
Yeah, I want to Allyson, get your thoughts on that as well. Just sort of talk about the primary lessons that we learned in this past year. And then maybe you can pivot to what things you think marketers will continue into next year, knowing how much we sort of evolved in this particular year.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. And thanks for having us. It's a really great opportunity to chat with you guys. So, I think, as Beth mentioned, there's so much consumer shift, and marketers really didn't have plans in place, and they had to adapt in ways that they never imagined. I think all of us did, both as humans as well as business professionals. And so, in the early days of the pandemic, we were working a lot with our clients around, different scenario planning, different adaptions that they had to make to their marketing plan. So, what if my stores don't open until June? What does that mean from a forecasting standpoint? And we have all this investment in sports programming. What do we do in terms of shifting those dollars? And sports, pretty much went away early days of the pandemic. We talked about consumer shifts and shifting creative messaging and working with, some of our retail clients around, having to shift all of their messaging to be curbside pickup or, delivery. So there was so much change happening at that time, particularly as it relates to marketing. And so really the marketers that we work with, they had to lean on tools and analytics to help them make those decisions and to make sure that they were could be confident in the decisions that they were making. And I think for us, what we've seen is some of that agile, data-driven marketing. We've talked about it, but we've really saw it put it into action this year. And I think that's the one thing that we think will stick with us, for years to come, is that the ability to lean on data and analytics to make decisions in a much more quick and rapid way.
And when you think about, when I think about all the things that Alacrity in particular has evolved, making a quick decision, years ago seemed, or 2 years ago seemed like I was doing it quickly, but this year the speed with which it happened, it was so much faster. Beth, I'm curious, have you seen with WarnerMedia in particular, have clients made decisions more quickly based on the measurement tools that they have at their fingertips?
Absolutely. I mean, it was an extraordinary circumstance in that they had to, right? It was it wasn't an option. So yes, and they were looking for a lot of flexibility from us as their media partners. Definitely looking for ways to make sure that they were delivering ROI so that they could continue to build their businesses during this tight time. I mean, every dollar needed to go farther. So, a lot more need for flexibility, more need for, very targeted messaging through media like addressable and digital, and the ability to be able to quickly change direction as needed. Pandemic up and down, messaging needed to change, stores opening and closing, just a lot of real world need to adjust.
Sure. Let me ask this: knowing the quantity of CMOs that I hear from, on a weekly basis, I talk to them. I hear the sort of this pressure, this endless pressure to still perform on, against the quarter, using the tools that they have at their fingertips. What do you think are the biggest obstacles that are stopping, aligning measurement against sort of a marketing goal, or what do you think is sort of not letting those two things connect more successfully? Allyson, I'll come back to you on this one.
Thanks. So, it's interesting because I too listen to a lot of podcasts and presentations from CMOs, and let's be honest. I mean, some of the fun parts of marketing is really building a brand purpose and developing meaningful relationships with your customers, customer experience, all of those things. That's really, why a lot of us go into marketing in the first place. I too studied marketing at Kellogg, so I understand that fun and crafting that message and really being able to convey the brand purpose to a consumer. But if you're doing that well, then you should be able to deliver brand growth as well. And so, we work with our clients to measure that true incrementality. How are you adding value to the bottom line? How are you adding incrementality to the brand and the brand's growth? And so, it's really about, tying those two things together and being able to do both the fun piece and do the messaging and crafting that story, but also ultimately delivering outcomes for the brand. And so, we work with our clients and we utilize unified analytics so that they can get a full omni-channel view to plan and optimize, while also measuring the impact of each of those touch points along that customer journey and building out those customer experiences.
Yeah. And Beth, I mean, just thinking about my behavior just this year, I cut my cable. I am now watching, cable effectively on my computer or on my phone, obviously the fragmentation is extraordinary. I'm curious about, when you're thinking about that evolution and measurement. I want to get to OTT in a second, but what obstacles did you see, happen? And then I want to get into OTT just in a minute. Have you seen the similar obstacles come up with CMOs in particular on measurement?
Absolutely. what we saw, as you mentioned, in the lead-in was just, an increase in overall usage of video. People were home. And at the same time, a shift towards connected TV, towards streaming services. As Allyson mentioned, there wasn't sports on. So this is just a lot of change in terms of people's patterns. And it underscored a problem that the industry has had anyway, which is the ability to look at how delivery is happening across all of these different platforms and modalities, so that we can understand, how to deliver messages in the right frequency to people and the right sequencing. And this is just an area that has always been challenging for us. And with the additional change that happened during the early phases of the pandemic, it became even harder. So there's a lot of effort in trying to solve for cross-platform measurement in the industry, both industry associations, as well as, the announcement, I think it was yesterday or the day before, from Nielsen on their cross-platform measurement plan.
Yeah. I think, Allyson, I'll pivot to you on this question. Thinking about OTT in particular, I think I want to ask about I don't know, there's a holy grail in my mind, at least from a measurement perspective, that, and optimally, with the death of the cookie, it obviously has a large change, but seeing just the quantity and fragmentation of an audience across so many different properties and publishers and media, how is it possible that we can create, or one can create, a solution to allow a marketer to really understand and have insight against the sort of the glut of data that comes at them?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, you mentioned, you're talking about TV, but, generally, we at Neustar, one of the things that we talk a lot about is identity. And identity is really, persistent identity in particular is something that will enable us to connect those dots effectively across platforms. So, this year we launched the ability to measure linear TV and MTA. And I think there's a lot of buzz in the industry around, is MTA dead, or is MTA going away? And the truth is that, as long as we have an identity solution that is the underpinning of that, we're able to, to connect those dots through direct integrations and direct partnerships so that we can see the full journey. And so, that's why we're now measuring linear TV and MTA, as well as, other channels, other addressable media, walled gardens, so that we can see, what is the impact across these channels at a consumer level. So, particularly as it relates to audiences, I think we've been talking a lot about TV and the changes. And I think, marketers are curious and want to see, how do these audiences perform across channels, beyond just, the basics of, age and gender. It's important to understand, if I'm targeting soccer moms, how do I know that I'm reaching them across these channels effectively?
Beth, do you want to provide some thoughts on that you have, given your role in, at research, driving research for WarnerMedia? I believe you also are looking for this sort of holy grail of measurement tools. Any thought on this question?
Absolutely. We've been developing our own solutions, of course, and working with the industry in terms of larger solutions. We have an advantage of having a great deal of first-party data available to us, which has allowed us to develop some targeting solutions, of course, in a privacy-compliant manner. So that is something that has been a large effort, particularly in the last 2 years. And it will allow us, in terms of understanding identity and precision targeting, to really help our advertisers with our own inventory.
Yeah. It seems like everyone has their own solution in their bailiwick, but there is that kind of that, whom do you trust? Before I get to the next question, I want to just reintroduce the whole panel. I'm Josh Golden. I'm the president and publisher for Ad Age, and we're speaking about the right measurement tools to justify your marketing spend in the all-important world of marketing and advertising. With me today are Allyson Dietz, the product marketing director for Neustar, and Beth Rockwood, the senior vice president of ad sales research for WarnerMedia. I just love talking to you both about this really important topic, because I got to tell you, there's a lot of fear about this part of the business because of how much it's changing and evolving. Oh, sorry, I have some shout outs from people who are watching. Hold on one second. Isabella from Germany, Kathleen from Illinois, Max from Nashville, Polly from Singapore, Jonathan from England, Terry from Virginia, Sheila from New Zealand, okay, Emily from New Jersey, Lisa from Maryland, Catherine from Hong Kong, and Judith from New York. Thank you all for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions for this extraordinarily intelligent panel, throw them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the conversation. I want to remind you, bring you back 15 years ago. I was at NBC at the time, and we were talking about the likelihood of the ability, this is about Friends, so I guess Friends wasn't really on the air anymore, but we were talking about the likelihood and the ability for a person who's watching the show to be able to buy Rachel's sweater. And I'm curious because, we've seen that e-commerce has grown 5 years in the last 6 months of time. Do you project in the near future that marketers and brands and agencies will have the ability to do a down funnel actions happening via linear or broadcast or linear or streaming television? I know it's a little bit out there, but in my mind, this is a long time coming. So I will start with you, Beth, because you are the closest to a media property that could actually do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say yes. Say yes.
Yes, it is very much on our mind. I mean, television has obviously traditionally always had great credentials in terms of brand building, and we are focused more and more on delivering lower funnel metrics. Certainly, e-commerce is a perfect example of that. It is something that we are working towards. We don't have solutions at this time, but experimenting with things like QR codes on air in terms of driving action on people's parts. We're tracking search behavior as a result of our advertising to see, what the immediate signal is on the internet. So we're getting closer, Josh. We're not there yet, but good. It's definitely a good business to be developing.
Yeah, I will make a small updated addition. If we could have, while I was watching the Queens Gambit, I recognized that chess sets grew extraordinary quantity based on topic of 8 shows on a specific narrow piece. So clearly there was a connection. Now, should Netflix have launched their own chess board? Maybe, maybe. Allyson, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, as Beth said, I think there's always been this misconception that TV is simply a top of funnel brand building capability and channel for a brand. And while that, that still holds, very much to be true in some instances, we also find in some industries that it can be very much down funnel. And so, when we look at in our MTA solutions with our clients, we're able to look at where does each touch point fall in that customer journey. And we can see, oftentimes TV does come much more mid or down funnel than you'd expect. And so it's really important for marketers to understand, particularly, you mentioned this, Josh, as more and more consumers have multiple devices, you're watching TV with your phone in your hand, or at least I do. And so, it's much easier for a consumer to make that purchase, and it can become much more of that down funnel experience for a brand. And I think it's important to understand where these channels fall and how they drive forward the business for each of the individual brands.
Yeah, I got to tell you, watching television with my family has become the television is on, but most of us are using it's annoying. I'm going to just move on because who wants to hear me complain? I want to talk about the walled gardens quickly because I think it's important to reference just the quantity of dollars that are spent on brands effectively that are with platforms. It's over 80% probably that are spent in the US that are sort of locked into their own little destination. Sorry about that. My phone is ringing. Do they figure? I actually also saw a story this morning on CNBC about the EU setting out some documentation or at least some regulations about the walled gardens. They're thinking about how the regulation is going to change for those walled gardens as well as their data, knowing how much the data is controlled by those individuals. Is there some way to figure a new paradigm for how that data will be shared and access to that data could be granted to, the brands that are needing it? I'll start with you, Allyson, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that the interesting thing is that obviously there's a lot of change happening in the industry. I think we haven't even touched on the word cookie yet. And that's something that surprises me in any panel these days.
I'll get to it, Allyson. Don't you worry.
The reality is that, there's so much regulation, California regulation, EU regulation, and then, obviously that's leading to a lot of these walled gardens and platforms to make some decisions, with Apple's announcement around IDFA earlier this year, and obviously Google Chrome announcing earlier this year. I mean, all of these big platforms are looking for ways to manage those regulations and to, protect their users as best they can in terms of their privacy. So, I think it's really important for us to not go back in time. I think what we want to make sure is that we continue to have access to both the addressability and the customer experiences that customers ultimately want to have. I mean, I think the reality is that the intention is that we want to be able to deliver relevant, strong advertising that's meaningful to a consumer, and not simply, seeing an ad for something that's completely irrelevant. I have kids in diapers. You two maybe do not, from the conversation that we've had so
they're
far.
all watching The Bachelor, and it's
so the idea of sending you guys a diaper ad is just completely irrelevant. It would just be wasted dollars for the advertiser, and it would be kind of annoying for you guys. You're way past that stage. The last thing you want to do is memories down, is diaper memories. But, for me, that's something that I'm currently in that life stage. So it's really important for marketers and consumers to be able to still maintain that level of addressability, but at the same time, consider the privacy regulations. And so that's why we've been, in this past year, we've been innovating with some of these walled gardens, in terms of, direct partnerships, direct integrations, leaning on identity, and also coming up with innovative ways to continue measurement. We've launched user sets and cohort-based measurement with Facebook this year, and it's really exciting to see us be able to continue to maintain the level of measurement and analytics that marketers have gotten used to and really need to drive their business forward. But at the same time, still considering that user privacy and those regulations that are coming out across the world.
Beth, tell me how you're working with the walled gardens, and do you see a loosening of their data to help your customers that are using WarnerMedia?
Well, we work with them a lot. I mean, we certainly compete with them, but they also carry our content. And just probably worth talking about a project that we're working on actually with the ANA and the WFA before that is they have been working with both Facebook and Google to find ways to, while allowing those platforms to keep their data very private, to be able to combine it so that advertisers can begin to see their overall delivery for campaigns, including television and our digital properties. So there are ways to make this work. They're technically a bit complex, but there are ways that we can keep data very private and still understand the impact of the campaign.
Yeah, completely. I want to talk about the future of measurement and maybe sound just a teeny bit Pollyanna-ish, if that's possible. Is there in the near future a universal measurement tool that will solve some of these critical issues that marketers are facing today in regards to privacy, with the cookie death and walled gardens? All these things are making it more and more difficult for a marketer to gain real insight about how the behavior of their potential consumers. I'm hopeful that there's something on the outlook, at least for us. Beth, why don't you talk about what you believe might be in existence soon?
Well, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of different efforts. I think we're seeing, as I mentioned earlier, you're seeing the large companies like Nielsen come up with new solutions. I wouldn't say that's soon. That's a few years out. There's also, other companies that are jumping into the measurement space that are providing us solutions, creative solutions to these problems. So, I think that there's not going to be one solution, Josh, I don't believe. And I think that's healthier if there are competing solutions for advertisers. So that, there'll continue to be a lot of information coming from the individual media companies to help advertisers solve problems. And then I would hope we will end up with a number of competing solutions that help pull everything together.
Me too. Allyson, you get the last word on this one. Is there some magical universal analytics tool that's going to be in my hands in the near future?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, as Beth said, I think there isn't going to be a silver bullet to solve a lot of these issues that we're facing in terms of, regulations and cookie lists, and so I think it's going to be a combined approach where we look at different ways in which to pull these data sets together, and really, you need one single identifier, single connector, and for us that's going to be identity, and our recently launched Fabrics ecosystem that allows us to connect the dots across first party data, second party data, third party data, and really using identity essentially as the glue to connect the dots across.
Oh my God, that sounds close enough for me. Before I let you both go, I wanted to find out if we mentioned streaming, and I feel obligated to ask everyone because I'm always looking for the next thing to watch. Tell me, Beth and Allyson, what your streaming suggestion would be. Feel free to stay on brand or go off platform if you'd like.
Thank you, Josh. I think for me, I'm really looking forward to, you might have heard about WarnerMedia releasing some new movies on direct to HBO Max.
I did hear that.
Well, the first one, Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Wonder Woman 84 next week. So that's
very
my small
excited. Very
promo.
big fan. Very big fan. Allyson, what do you have?
Yeah, I think I've already kind of alluded to, I have small kids. So, I mean, obviously my streaming services are fairly limited these days in terms of adult content. But I would say, one of the things that we missed the boat on Game of Thrones. And so we've really enjoyed, starting from this beginning and kind of watching the whole thing start to finish. It's incredible. It's an incredible show. And so, if you haven't watched it and you were like me and you missed the boat, it's definitely worth, sitting. I was apprehensive about making that commitment, but it was totally worth it.
You know what? Just buckle up because it's crazy. Both of you, thank you so much. Allyson Dietz, Product Marketing Director for Neustar, and Beth Rockwood, the Senior Vice President of Ad Sales Research for WarnerMedia. Both of you, thank you so much for your insight today. I thought it was really helpful given the challenges that they're facing in the industry. I think it's an extraordinarily important conversation.
Thank you, Josh and Allyson.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's really
fun. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.